The Washington Post publishes an op-ed article promoting KINK. Welcome back to Bible Bears, everyone. I'm Ryder Cullison. So, the Washington Post has published an article from a former sex worker who endorses KINK at the Pride Parades. So essentially, if you don't know what KINK is, it basically sounds like what you think it probably is. Something that's kinky. So at these Pride Parades, you might find somebody walking around in outfits that otherwise would be inappropriate in the normal public space. Okay? Now, before I get into details of this story, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and don't forget to hit that bell notification so that you will be alerted when I post new videos. Now, as always, just to warm up the crowd, we always start off with a dad joke. So, it's time for the bad dad joke of the day. Did you hear about the koala who found out he wasn't a bear? Yeah, he said, "What? I'm not a bear, but I have all the qualifications."
You are such a loser.
All right, let's get into this. So, as I mentioned, there was a former sex worker who wrote an op-ed article for the Washington Post. This sex worker describes herself as a gender-vague person who is married to a trans woman and an autistic person raising two neurodivergent kids. I don't know what that means. Now, full disclaimer, I'm not for bullying anybody. Listen, I'm a Christian, so there is let's say, a code by which I live my life, and much of what this person is advocating for, this kink, stands in contrast or conflict to how I feel that God wants His children to live their life. With that said, just because this person has differing points of view does not mean I advocate in any way bullying this person, trashing them, trying to denounce their whole movement, squashing pride parades. I'm not for that because I'm a Christian and I believe we should love our neighbor as ourselves. Now, that does not mean we can't offer some instruction, some teaching, say, hey, look, I understand you feel this way, but have you considered this as well? Have you considered what God wants for your life? As Christians, we cannot bully or condemn to hell people, especially from the LGBT community, who have differing lifestyles or differing points of view. If we condemn them to hell, we essentially cut off their ears and they don't hear anything we say. So, while we think our way is best, they'll never hear it unless we approach them out of love. Okay? Let's get on with this. So this former sex worker said, starts the article by reminiscing the first time she went to a Pride Parade 5 years earlier. She brought her elementary school-age child to that parade, and her child witnessed a bare-chested man in dark sunglasses whose suspenders clipped into a leather thong, while that person was playfully spanked by their partner. Obviously, there's issues with this. What I have a problem with is when people are promoting this, they promote it as a way of helping society, okay? But at the same time, they smuggle in what many of us would consider their deviant behavior. Case in point, we don't talk to our children enough about pursuing sex to fulfill carnal needs that delight and captivate us in the moment. So that's basically, let's just throw caution to the wind, indulge in whatever feels good in the moment. Whether that's sex, it could be alcohol, could be drug use, anything. Just if it feels good, go for it. Don't feel bad about it. So that's a problem right there. Sharing the language of kink culture with young people provides them with valuable information about safe sex practice. So she starts off by saying, hey, let's just fulfill our carnal desires, Because we need to teach kids about this, because it promotes safe sex. How do you leap from fulfilling your carnal desires to this helps promote safe sex? All right, you can't just put in a disclaimer and say this is okay because of safe sex. There's no safe sex practices talked about here. All right, jumping into bed with somebody, fulfilling any carnal desire that you have on a whim is actually in total conflict with safe sex, because most people aren't practicing safe sex in those scenarios. But I'll continue. Children who witness kink culture are reassured that alternative experiences of sexuality and expression are valid. So essentially the bottom line here is, if you're into whipping people or getting whipped or looking at pornography or some other type of fetish that falls outside of what society deems as normal behavior, we don't want you to feel bad about it. So the answer is just to expose elementary school age children to it now, so that they'll grow up thinking, hey, everything's cool and everything's fine. Now obviously a lot of people were upset with this, especially since the Washington Post published this. Now a lot of people have opinions. You know, there's lots of crazy opinions out there, but once credible, and I have to use that term loosely now, but once major news publications start publishing this type of material, that lends a certain sense of legitimacy to it. Hey, let's all listen to this individual peddle her beliefs because we feel that they are now credible and valid. So, this is a former congressional candidate said, conspiracy theorists told you something dastardly was going on in our nation with pedophilia, and now it is in our faces. If this isn't alarming, I don't know what is. So, I'm not suggesting that this former sex worker was advocating pedophilia. I did not hear that in here. However, there is a slippery slope that we're on. Once you start allowing this, and then you start allowing that, you've got whips coming in, you've got dog masks entering the scene. When do we start sliding down the slope to just saying, hey, let's just start involving children in this? An actor and attorney wrote, the road to socially accepted pedophilia is enabled by a society that is too afraid to call out perversion and deviance out of fear of being labeled a bigot. If rampant drug use were part of the LGBT community and lifestyle, which I'm not saying it is, I'm just giving you an example, but what if it was? That's totally acceptable now, because you can't call them out on anything, or else you're labeled transphobic, homophobic, racist, queerphobic, lesbian-phobic, whatever. Look at this tweet by Kirstie Alley this morning. I think this is pretty germane to the conversation. Essentially, she's saying, at what point is society just going to say, hey, you know what? Pedophilia is totally acceptable. We're all loving children. And love don't judge, right? Now, more to the point of people in authority making particular arguments and for deviance or pornography, but then trying to smuggle that in by saying it's what's best for society. Now, in a similar story, a Swiss professor has come out and said, this guy's a physician as well. He said we should watch pornography with our students in school. Why? Because porn should be watched with students to confront the distorted images the films convey. So, porn watching is up evidently 20% or more because of COVID. These kids, these students are seeing a distorted view of reality in pornography. Hey, no argument there. Pornography has lots of detrimental effects. There's been many studies on it. It's been considered addictive. So what this physician is saying is, hey, you can either let them watch it alone and maybe be corrupted by it, come away with a distorted sense of reality, or you can watch it with them in class, and then you can say, hey, this is not reality. This is wrong. Let's continue watching more. Hey, look at this video. Guys, this is not real life. To me, that's kind of like saying, hey, being on cocaine or LSD is not reality. And so the best way to show you the difference between drug use and reality is to do drugs with you and then point out all the weird sensations and feelings that we are having that are not legitimate. So, of course, this guy is under fire as well. Now, for some good news, the Iowa State Supreme Court basically said the state can ban Planned Parenthood from providing sex education material in their state, okay? They've realized that Planned Parenthood providing sex education to students is pretty much underhanded. It's a conflict of interest. This is like, imagine you're an organization that thrives and profits off of abortions. In order for someone to get an abortion, they must first get pregnant. So you are peddling material to young students, encouraging them to get pregnant, and then providing the abortion. This is, imagine if Burger King owned a cardiovascular hospital, which to my knowledge they don't, but picture it. Then they go into your schools and say, hey, you kids need to be eating our double bacon cheeseburgers every day because they are flame broiled and delicious. Eat them all the time, but don't worry if you get obese and you develop heart problems, because you can just come to our hospital and we'll put stents in for you. Now, the Iowa State Supreme Court realizes that the state of Iowa, rather than providing abortions, will rather teach kids abstinence. So in the same sense, with the Burger King analogy, rather than saying, eat all these cheeseburgers, we'll heal your heart later, Iowa would just rather teach healthy dieting choices, which is what we should all be doing. But nobody wants to talk about abstinence because that's not freedom to fulfill your carnal desires. Am I being transphobic, homophobic, whatever phobic do you want to place on me? I'm not trying to be any of those things, but there is a slippery slope coming up. Anybody in the LGBT community who does not want their child peddled to older men and women for pedophilia needs to recognize the slippery slope that you are on, or that you have shoved others down. All right? You can stand firm with how you feel about yourself, but not push us further into deviance. I think you need to stand up and call people out on this as well. This is the direction we should not be going. Please take the rudder and shift it into another direction. Guys, I love to hear from you. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the share button. And as always, I love you. Every one of you. I promise. Have a blessed week.